AM 970 WSTX.
Welcome to WSTX Reflections. Tell us a little bit about you and your life here in the Virgin Islands.
Thank you. Good morning. Once again, my name is Naeemah Legair. I am a Crucian, Virgin Islands native. I'm currently a student at the George Washington University in the District of Columbia. I am a senior now, and I'm studying hospitality management. My experience with the St. Croix Landmark Society started one day when I was coming back home for one summer, and I decided I want a meaningful experience this summer. So I just emailed Miss Dow, Sonia Jacobs Dow, the director at St. Croix Landmark Society, and asked if I could do an internship, and she said okay. So it was as easy as that. I went in and talked to her, of course, and she did a formal interview, but then she generally said okay, and so I started working there. Last summer, the summer of 2014, my goal was to work on a calendar for the Estate Wing Museum, but I ended up doing everything else, and the catalog didn't officially get done, but I worked on Come Home to St. Croix, the 2014 Come Home to St. Croix. I guided museum tours, and I learned a bit about I learned how the library system worked, and I learned how interesting genealogy is to people who wouldn't at first glance think that genealogy was important. In the library and archives at the Estate Wing Museum, there are extensive records. There are census records, there are church records, and there's a general report from a former judge back in the Danish West Indian times called Judge Sorrow. Judge Sorrow's report has a listing of just about everybody who was enslaved on the island at one point. So that's an extensive report, and it's unique because places outside of St. Croix don't have that kind of information, so it's really easy to trace your steps, to trace your history. So that's interesting. And then I just met a bunch of interesting people and unique people too.
All right.
And so this year again, I worked on Come Home to St. Croix, and I worked with, and I helped to construct one of the opening exhibits called the Big Yard exhibit. It's still up, so if anyone wants to see it, go down there. And there are some panels with information on them. They might not be up right now, but just go into the office and ask someone to pull out the green exhibit panels, and they should be able to do it for you. So.
All right. Come Home to St. Croix. That's I got involved in that last year, ironically, also, but I wasn't here.
Right.
And you see the video playing in there. That was part of my contribution. And it's interesting because here you are studying hospitality. What's it full?
It's a Bachelor of Business, but it's a the concentration is hospitality management. That's the name of it.
All right. And if you had to say, well, your experience and at Landmark Society gives you a special advantage or a special exposure, how would you describe it in terms of what you do in school versus your experience here?
Okay, so I'm in a business school, so everything is how do you sell yourself? How do you present yourself in the most marketable light? How do you increase your perceived value? At St. Croix Landmark Society, it's more about making people go away with a general warm feeling or a general feeling of this place is valuable without having to express it expressly, look at us. It's about making people feel a certain way as opposed to making yourself be perceived as a certain way. So, and there are things, it's not supposed to be a tourist attraction. That's how we market ourselves, but that's not what the experience should be to someone. It's not a way to sell the society to someone. It's a way of making people value it on their own, on a personal level. The things that they do down there, the parts of the culture that they highlight aren't parts of the culture that you would normally think to highlight.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. Caller, you on the air? Hello. Okay, I guess they're gone. Yeah, that's. I was listening to the degree you're pursuing, and I'm saying, well, this is interesting, complementary in a way because it gives you a different perspective, and also in the context of being in a business. Let's say tomorrow. Hyatt Regency or one of these big names says, hey, Naeemah, we like your credentials and we want you to be here. You have a different perspective that you can say, hey, you can do these type of things this way. And yes, we have to build up perceived value, but you'll be surprised what this subliminal value is in terms of bringing people back and spending the money that makes you the successful company that you are. So that's why I asked that question. Well, tell me a little bit about you and growing up here on St. Croix.
Okay.
Where'd you go to school, for starters?
The daycare I went to is Miss Harella's Daycare, Child's World. It's not open anymore. And then I went to the Church of God Holiness Academy. I was there for 8 years, and that was the longest time I'd spent at any one school. And then for high school, I went to Country Day School. But the Church of God Holiness Academy experience was the one that stands out more, just because I was there for a longer time and was able to form the bonds a little bit longer.
All right. Well, that's, even though Miss Harella's school is no longer there, when you say that, you'd be surprised how many people out there say, yeah, my child went there too, and everything else. So it's all very touchy-feely. We're a small community in that sense. So it's not that it's close, it's the experience and the people and the interaction. And my daughter went to Church of God School also. It's a nice environment. And from there, you say you went to Country Day?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what you used to like to do for fun?
Okay.
You used to read a lot. You as we say in Crucian, you used to go climbing. You were a Tom. What? Tell me about you in that context just a little bit.
Okay. Well, either to the delight or to the dismay of many people, I was a child of the 90s, so I spent a lot of my time playing video games. I did spend some time outdoors, but it was mostly the PlayStation 2 and the Game Boy. And,
all right.
And I would, the most time I spent outside is probably when I lived in Work and Rest, because I had plenty of neighbors when I was in Work and Rest, and some of us I discovered later, I think when I was like in the 8th grade or 6th grade, or at some point in middle school, I learned that some kids from my school lived in the same neighborhood, so they would call me outside from my PlayStation. They would bang on my door until I come outside, and we would all share our toys. So we would ride our bikes. They would let me use their skates. I would let them use my bike. I would let them use my scooter, and we would like race down the hill and things like that.
All right. That's a big part of it. You don't even know how much that helped to shape the person who you are. So in that sense, but you'll discover that as time goes by. Right. But all that is important because it's part of the process of making you holistically who you are, and ultimately your contribution is going to be
right.
influenced by those things. Okay. So where you said you're going to George Washington in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
So tell me about Washington, D.C. Your impression, your experiences, just in general.
Okay, well,
just a second. We have someone here called. Good day, may I help?
Good morning, Dougie.
Yes, good morning, sir. How you doing?
Oh, holy man. Listen, I am enjoying the program because the lady you have there right now, she's so articulate, and those before Dr. Williams, and I know his son, how much they put in together. This is what family is supposed to really learn, that the family is responsible for a lot of things. You just can't expect a lot of other people to be doing this and that for you. And a lot of people want to gain something by the wishbone. The thing you could wish for this and wish for that, but everything has a lot of work in it, but you feel good about yourself. And I am so thrilled about what I am hearing about this beautiful island of St. Croix and the people that making this island a little brighter. Now the lady says she used to do a lot of games and things like that. I would suggest that she put on a snorkel and check out the seawater. Because listen, it's such a beautiful world when you dive or maybe around rocks and see the amount of fishes. It's a very beautiful world. So I don't know if she know to swim.
I do.
But we got water all around us, and she must try to enjoy some of what we have.
Okay. Well, you said something there, and I want to spin it over to Naeemah. Parents. We haven't talked a whole lot about the parental or adult. Who were your mentors? How did your parents factor into what you decided to do?
Okay.
Well,
no. She's gonna answer. You stay on the line.
Okay. Well, I don't know about anyone else, but I would have to say my mom, my grandmother, because I have a big family, but they're spread out all over the world. So the people who live here were mostly my mom, my grandmother, my grandfather, and of course there were teachers and things like that. But it was my mom. She's really supportive. She never, every time I have an idea, she doesn't say, oh, that's a dumb idea or it's not going to work or something like that. The first thing she says is, okay, what do you need? How can I help? So, and then my grandmother too is always like, what do you need? How can I help?
Right.
So that's, and I'm very soft. I'm very much like a baby. So I don't like people putting me down, and it's and I want to say something. You never know what someone has on the inside, just because they may have a certain disposition on the outside. They may seem very rough around the edges, but you have to treat people with care, because you never know what they're going through.
That's right. Yeah.
Something happened last week where I was at the Wim Cafe. It was either last week or 2 weeks ago. I was at the Wim Cafe getting lunch, and they don't take credit, and I forgot about that, and I only had a limited amount of cash, and the guy sitting next to me was like, he didn't look very friendly, but as soon as he realized what was happening, he was like, I'll get it. And I was like, oh, thank you. So some people, just because they look a certain way on the outside doesn't mean.
That's right. Don't judge a book by the cover. But it's what you said, and in terms of what the caller said with parents and what Dr. Wallace said about the parental involvement. Right. What do you need? In essence, if we were to condense it, is I'm there for you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and don't tell kids that they can't do something, because nothing, very much more than likely they can do it. You just hasn't been done before.
Yeah. So see, sir, that parental importance is there and present and played a role in this young lady's life too.
Right.
You see, the parents sometimes they have to learn to, because they have been through some old time way or some hardship, and it's still in their mind, and sometimes they pass it on to the children, and they pull the children down. Everything they do, oh man, you're doing this wrong. Why you don't? The negative thing. You have to try to see the positive things.
Definitely.
In children. And this lady that you have there now,
Naeemah,
she is going to pass it on to somebody else.
Yeah, well, I'm listening to the words of wisdom here that she doesn't even realize she's speaking to me here, and I'm saying like, wow, okay. It's like you're just ready to just turn her loose on the world in the sense that it's going to be a positive result, just the influence on others, okay? All right.
It's a nice thing hearing a young person like that saying this, and not only on St. Croix, but when she go any place, traveling, they say, where are you from? I'm from the Virgin Islands. Oh, yeah? You mean we have such beautiful people?
We got them all over. We just need to do more recognition, not the kind of political recognition, that type of thing. Just the basic recognition, and teach our children to do that from small, because we have it. You don't have to reach the age of 99 to be recognized because of longevity. You can make a contribution very early in life, and we need to recognize, not take it for granted, because that's a thing that is so easy to do, to just take it for granted.
That's true.
Yeah,
and appreciate what we have.
Exactly.
And not only what we have, but the people that we have. Yeah.
Definitely.
So the best to that young lady, because she's going to be she going places.
Going places, and definitely an asset to the world.
Thank you.
We up in our little age now, and when you hear things like this from the youth, it makes you feel good. Mm-hmm. We know we're going to be in good hands.
Definitely. We know we're going to walk down the street. If we got a cane, they ain't going to come over and kick it from under us.
Well, you just keep up with your program here, Dougie, because you really have everything under good control.
Okay, well, thanks for the compliment, and definitely we appreciate your input, okay? And I come in to see you because I'm working on a special project, because we talked about this. So, and it's so funny, yesterday I sat down with an elder in my community, and he was telling me about what house was where and who lived there and how they came over on the mail boat. And I don't know a thing about no mail boat, but I learned something last night, okay,
what was the name of the mail boat?
The Mary?
And the Julia?
Well, I don't know all of that. I'm learning.
And we had 3 big 2 masters that would bring goods from Puerto Rico here. You know the name of them?
No, I have no idea.
The Swan, and the Inga, and the Calzac.
Okay.
And then we had Bomba sailing the Flight. And to see those 2 masters come in and dock up at the wharf, it took a lot of skill.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But, man, we just have to enjoy life. Every morning you get up and you see the light. Man, thank the Almighty for another day, you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir.
That's right. Okay, well, thanks for the call, and we appreciate hearing your voice. It's always reassuring knowing that you are there, because that means we're here. All right.
Good cigar.
Okay, you take care.
You remember that one?
Yeah, I remember. I learning, paying attention. I'm going to make sure I pass the test.
Good cigar.
All right, then. Take care. Yeah, coming back to your involvement with the landmarks and the big yard and the long row. When you come down into Christiansted at the wharf, you know where the taxi guys are right there?
Yeah.
That's Church Street.
Yes.
If you walk all the way up Church Street, it eventually ends at a T intersection at New Street. And across the street was a long row. And it was really long because it ran practically from there all the way to the other road on the other side. Okay? I'm just saying, it's no longer there. It's long gone. And apparently, you had the long row, and we had a lot of people coming in, migrating from Puerto Rico here. And there were a lot of my Puerto Rican neighbors that lived on the back road there, just above the long row and below the long row. So I met someone yesterday who was giving me the relates.
Okay.
And so, the first thing I told him is we need to sit down with a video recorder and do this because I can't take it all in. And then he went to tell me about a certain member of my family who could tell me with even more detail than I did, and it would never have dawned on me in that context because it just so happens that that my branch of the Canton family, meaning my father and his brothers, originally were right there in Christiansted, right on New Street, up there on New Street.
Tell them to come to WIM and do an interview.
Okay, well, I'm going to reach there. Whatever I do is going to reach there, definitely. But what I had in mind more so was we got to walk the ground, so that and walk with it that way, so he can talk about what was here and who had lived, and he started calling all of these names, and of course these folks have long moved on, but they have descendants here, and they still know them, and we've got to start reconstructing it. And my children, my family now going forward need to know the history of where they live, at least. It's that small area. And then, of course, you have the bigger Virgin Islands issue and St. Croix issue of knowing things that's where landmarks comes in.
Right,
okay?
yeah. And another thing is it's important to know more. The more you learn about them, the better able you are to protect them. So, for example, most of these, or all of these buildings are landmarks, and people sometimes try to get rid of them, not understanding their importance.
Yep.
So, I mean, if you're driving by and you see construction signs on these buildings, or if you see them going down or something, you should definitely ask a question and see what's going on, because that if it's getting knocked down, that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, well, there are certain things that happen around here. One is we see big trees get cut down, and you want to know who got a permit and could cut down this tree just like that. Big mahogany tree, been there for donkey years, and somebody come along and say, I don't want to hear it, just cut it down. After the damage is done, you can't do anything about it like that. So we need to be more vigilant in that respect. Also in terms of ruins, but it's a challenge sometimes, because when people want to use their property, the ways in which you're allowed to rebuild sometimes can be very onerous, and in terms of you have to build it back to look pretty much and use the same type of materials or the more modern day version of those materials. So if you want to build concrete when it was wood before, you may not be able to do that accordingly. So it's very interesting, and you see these ruins there and people ready to clear it away like it has no meaning, and you're right on the mark. It has a meaning. Now I'll give you another example. There's a house that, let's say it's number 9 and 10 so and so. Well, in talking with this gentleman yesterday, he's saying, well, I used to have this house there, and Miss so-and-so used to live there, and then this house was in the other plot, and Miss so-and-so, and you wouldn't know Miss so-and-so because she was 90-something years old back in them days, and so and the conversation going on, and I'm just intrigued because as a child walking by there, I always knew something was there, but obviously I wasn't paying attention to detail because I missed that there were actually 2 buildings there, and at some point it got taken down and a concrete building got put up there in the place. Of course, we didn't have preservation at work the way we have it going on these days. Okay. Well, the conversation is moving right along, and I'm enjoying it, but the station got to make some money, so we're going to take a pause for the cars. All right?
AM 970 WSTX.
All right, we're back here. Reflections, WSTX 773-0390. 773-0490. And we have Naeemah Legair, a young lady of the Virgin Islands who is going to school studying business, hospitality related, and has interned for the last 2 years with the St. Croix Landmarks Society. She came down here thinking she knew what she wanted to do and got introduced to a world that was so big and so interesting that she ended up doing a whole lot more. Right. And that's good because, sometimes, just like the guy sitting next to you, sometimes you just don't know what's around you. And it was fantastic when I heard you say that, because you know, and a random act of kindness.
Yeah.
Just do it. It's not all about what you get. Sometimes it's what you do for other people. Life is so short. But yeah, so one of the things that we'll do before we leave here, if not during the show, after the show, is I'll show you on the map where the place was and so forth, so you get an understanding. And I believe, Cecily, you had told me about some type of a research-related presentation that's going on in Christiansted. Landmarks had sent out an email.
Yes, they did. In regards to the historic preservation.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll track that down for you also and make sure before we leave here today that you know about that. I believe that it has a title or a theme, "If Walls Could Talk."
Okay.
And it's because, of course, you know, down here in Christiansted, the slaves that passed through, the auctioning of slaves and everything that took place there, as far as the public auctions, of course, there were private auctions that probably went on, also private transactions. But if the walls could talk,
Yeah.
that's a very interesting thought there, because unfortunately, in many ways, the people who were impacted most by slavery, the slaves, had the least say
Right.
and the least documentation of what they had to say. So anything that helps to reconstruct that, to give us a better feel for the life and the experience of these folks, is something that we should welcome and take advantage of. Okay? Turn it over to you there. Yeah, you were saying you want to talk a little bit more about the... well, let me see who's calling.
Okay.
Good day, caller. May I help?
This is Sonia Dow from the St. Croix Landmark Society. Good morning to Naeemah as well.
Good morning, Ms. Dow.
I want to say to you that Naeemah is a very low-key person and doesn't toot her horn very loudly.
You telling me? I had to send police to get her to come down here?
I know. She has made such a huge impact on the Landmark Society. Whatever she does in the world, after this, she's left her mark here. And even when we think of the exhibit that she and our other intern, Essence Carter, worked on, they didn't just work on it, they researched it, they planned it, they executed it. Of course, they had help from other people, but they knew who to call in to help them. And as we begin this year of looking at long rows and big yards and the vernacular structures and the people who lived in them, they've created an exhibit at whim that's going to remind people every day of the simplicity and yet the beauty of the execution of these vernacular structures and why they're so important to us. And that's going to last long after Naeemah's back in D.C., going to school, whatever, that's going to be there. And the way that people they were able to engage people. Individuals in our community are still bringing in items because they come and they look and they say, oh, I have something that would fit there. I have this that would fit there. You know, so people are engaged. It allowed us to get people out to talk about living in a long row or living in a yard, in a big yard. And people are still saying, okay, when are you doing that again? I have somebody else. I got something I want to tell, or I know someone else who should talk about this. So her impact on us has been really tremendous. On an everyday basis, Naeemah is the person who sees something that needs to be done, and she goes in and does it. She is always very gentle in her approach, trying to make sure she doesn't step on anybody's toes or anything, but she has very good ideas and has just really made such a wonderful impression on us. I want to congratulate her for that and thank her for being a part of Landmark Society and helping us to engage even more people with us. So Dougie, thank you to you for having her on. I don't want to stay on long. I just wanted to be sure that she got her due.
All right, fantastic. Well, I thank you for taking the time to do that, you know, because the roses are always best when we're alive to enjoy them, you know. And so in this case, we have this young spirit here, so it's not only to enjoy but to inspire.
Right, right. So have a good day.
You do
Okay.
the same. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thank you, Ms.
Fantastic.
Dow.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay, also, can I give a,
It's yours.
now that Ms. Dow is mentioning who helped with the exhibit, I'd like to just give a shout out to Mr. Vegan Ellis. He's a local joiner and he's one of the last, so he's sort of a living legend. The actual construction part of it, like cutting, binding, all of that was done by him. And he makes museum quality furniture, so it's really good stuff that he makes. And there was also people who donated. I don't know if I want to I don't know how they would feel about me blasting their names out on the radio, but different people who donated. So I guess I could say Mr. Dean Howell. He donated a lot of stuff, and he helped to steer me in the right direction with what should be actually in the exhibit. There was a Mr. Saki who donated washboard and some other things, and different people came in. There was a Mr. Scouton who came and donated some lemongrass because we need local herbs and stuff outside in front of the long row. Of course, library staff and library volunteers helped. I don't want to call their names because a lot of them are very private, so I absolutely won't say their names, but they know who they are. And the staff too was asking, what can I bring? And I have this, can I bring it in? So I just want to say thank you to everybody who helped. And of course, Essence Carter, she was another intern, and Malik Sapeda, another intern. I think he's still here on the island. Essence Carter recently went back to she's from Missouri. I think that's where she is right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for helping with the exhibit, and it was a great experience.
Oh, yeah. And if you have not been down to the Landmark Society, we just commonly call it Whim Great House, but it's more than a great house.
Right.
It's a whole campus, let's call it that,
Yeah, it's
of culture, campus of culture. If you haven't been down there recently, you really need to go and take that drive and go check it out. We got another caller here. Good day, caller, may I help?
And good morning to you, and good morning to the wonderful Naeemah.
Good morning
Your
to
listening
you.
audience.
And thank you for giving me the roundabout introduction so I could call police and make them bring it down here.
And that's how she is. She'll be there doing everything, and sometimes you won't even hear her. But Naeemah has been a very big asset, and when she first came last year, had we known what Naeemah can do, we would have never let her go to any part of Landmarks except in the library. and she ended up assisting us so well with the exhibit last year. But Naeemah, I publicly thank you. Up to the day before yesterday, Naeemah rescued me. Because she's good in technology too,
All right.
So it's that game board playing and all of that. It might have paid off, but she's really an excellent person to work with, to be around, and she's going to go far in life. And, so congratulations to you, Naeemah, on the successes that you've had so far, and I know you're going to go far with everything that you do.
Thank you, Ms. Ruba.
She has done great work. So thank you. And Dougie, thank you for having her on your program so that people could know the quality of our youngsters.
Yeah.
I was listening to the program earlier when you had the track and field and all the sports events. The young people are doing great things. And those are the things that we don't hear about as much as we hear the bad stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So
We've got to trumpet the good.
yeah. And so with all the stress and everything that's going on, it's good to hear the good stuff.
Amen.
So
Amen.
keep it up, and Naeemah, thanks again, and good luck to you.
All right.
Bye, Ms. Roebuck. I'll see you in a little
Bye-bye.
while.
You're sure now? Because it's a lot to see in Christiansted that might get you caught up before you go down to it.
well, we already told Naeemah I know she's going to come back at some point, but I believe every young person should leave this island, spread their wings, see what the world is about, but come back home. because you can't forget where you're coming from. But go out, learn what you need to learn, or get the exposure, and then bring it back, and share that wealth of knowledge. So I know Naeemah is not going to forget. And one more thing before I go. To the gentleman that called in, Mr. Good Cigar. Yes. Know that Naeemah knows the sea, okay? Naeemah knows how to swim. She knows how to float. She can do a little diving. So she knows the sea. So she's all around.
I got that impression, but the modest, quiet side kind of rules things, and I said, okay, that's her personality, no problem.
Yes.
No problem.
So we'll be here to, give her flowers, as you say, give her flowers, her kudos, and all of that, because she's a very humble young lady.
Definitely.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for calling.
Sure. Bye-bye.
All right. Yeah. All right.
Before we continue, I think we should stop and clarify what a long row is, and maybe talk a little bit about big yards, because we've just been talking about, there's a building down there in Christiansted, and people they have an idea of what we're talking about, but they need a definition of some sort. So a long row, long rows started off as their predecessors were wattle and daub huts, which were, the huts made of sticks and mud, and they were used to house the enslaved people. Eventually, and they were different, I think about 5 or 6 variations before we got to what we have now. But then after the wattle and daub huts, plantation owners realized they had to replace that because that wasn't very sturdy, and they were losing money because their laborers were dying because they weren't living in proper conditions. So it changed from wattle and daub to 2-unit masonry huts. And then some people got the idea of, why don't we make them 3-unit, 4-unit? And there's one as big as, in the library, they were telling me about the 15-unit one. I think it was in a place called Hogansburg. I think the ruins are still up, but the building is not in use anymore or something. But people have gone by, and I know one of the library volunteers, she said she recently went by and saw it. She took one of the interns to see it. So they can be as long as 15 units. Most of them are 2 units or 3 units. A lot of them are made of shingles. A lot of them are made of wood. At the exhibit down by WIM, we have one of shingles. And they can also be made of brick and mortar too. But they're basically 2-unit houses, generally 12 feet by 12 feet. Each unit was 12 feet by 12 feet. And although that doesn't sound like a lot of space, it was very spacious because a lot of the older people, they might recall, or they might have relatives who recall growing up in one, and they would know firsthand experience. Sometimes up to 10 people were able to fit into one of those long row units. Yeah. So, and that's another thing. If you have an experience that you want to share, please come to WIM and come do an interview with me and tell me about it, because we need to have that on record. And also, if you grew up in a big yard. So a big yard is a plot of land or a yard where more than one house or more than one dwelling space would be. You could have long rows in a big yard. That's why our exhibit was focusing on long rows and big yards. Or there could be 1-unit homes in there. Some of the yards, there's a Petrus yard in Christiansted. There was one called Anglican Poor Yard. It's on 15 Queen Street, where Brady's restaurant is now. And these yards were usually called by name, like Petrus Yard, Williams Yard. And Williams Yard is known by some people as generally Big Yard. That's how we got the name. That's how we got the idea of Big Yard, because most of these yards are long. In Fredericksted, there was a Cologne. There was a Bailey's Yard. And I can't think of any of the others. But if you know of a yard that you grew up in, or just a long row, because long rows didn't necessarily have to be in yards. They could be just on the side of the street. If you have an experience of growing up in a long row or a big yard, come in and talk to me about it. Or leave a note for me in the office, because I'm not there right now. Okay.
Well, definitely we're not going to let you go back to Washington, D.C. at the rate you're going, Okay, you'll be like, I had a sailor in here the other day, told me his father sailed to St. Croix and never left, in that sense. So, yeah. But, I was telling you that when you come into Christiansted, coming toward the waterfront, there's Church Street. Church Street is right there, the corner where the taxi men sit right there underneath the shade there. So if you turn right on to Church Street and follow that road all the way up, you reach eventually, it comes to a T intersection where you have to turn either left to go down the hill or right to go up the hill. Straight across into what is now Bush, we had a long road. And and that's how I became familiar with the term long row, because it's go down in long row and call so and so, or whatever the case may be. And as time evolved, that long row had functionality because a lot of people who were coming to the St. Croix in particular had people that were staying there, and they'd come meet up there, stay there for a while, and then move out, so forth. But there's certain families that you knew because that's where you knew them from. And as an aside, it used to have a standpipe on Church Street, and folks would come from the long road down and get their water, and as we say, cat water all the way back down. I mean, thank God for indoor plumbing, okay? Because, you know, our folks, meaning our younger folks, having not been in a situation where they had to get up and tend to sheep and goat and so forth and so on at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning, they just don't know how comfortable they got it now. In that context, you go in the shower and turn on the shower and let waste water, leave it there running. You know, if they had to cut water down the road, they would be very particular about how far that water went after it got down the road. Yeah. So there's a lot to learn, a lot of interesting things in our culture that otherwise could just slip away from us. So the work that you do is appreciated. The work that Landmarks does is appreciated, and every museum on St. Croix that in some way contributes to the documentation and preservation of these cultural artifacts and things that went on is very much appreciated. Good day. Hello.
Dougie.
Yes, sir.
Ask her if she could find out something about the Pleasant Grove. Every time I mention the Grove to somebody, they think it's in the country. But the Pleasant Grove was a property owned by the Lutheran Church just west of where the airport come in now. That's in Watergut. And they had a lot of long roads there. So she could get some information from the Lutheran Church, and the lady that is working in the office, Miss Emmanuel, she lived there.
All right.
And I grew up there too, climbing coconut trees.
Okay.
And we had our boat right in front. And most of these, being close to the sea, they were about, I would say, about 4 feet off the ground.
4 feet off, the long roads were 4 feet off the ground?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting. From the literature I was reading said that after a while in the 1900s, the standard was about, I believe it was 6 feet or 8 inches off the ground. So if it was a whole 4 feet, that's
yeah, well, but that's Gallows Bay, so that you got to deal with the tide.
Right.
I mean, not Gallows Bay, Watergut.
Yeah.
So you got to deal with the tide and everything else. So it probably was, and storm and everything else. So it would have behooved them to have it up in that context. Yeah, but so
closer to the sea, they were about 4 feet. Even had steps. But when you go more in the back now, a lot of them were close to the ground. And I don't know if you know what's the swamp. You ever heard about the swamp?
I'm vaguely familiar with that.
Well, that's just between the Grove and the house in Project. Where I think that Redfield, he lived there. That was known as the swamp, just because, I guess, of the low location. Okay. But the Pleasant Grove should have a lot of history.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Okay, good.
Thank you so much for calling back and sharing that with us. Really appreciate it.
Good.
Okay, then. Take care. All right. Well, we got a few minutes left.
Okay.
See how fast a conversation is
Yeah.
make an hour go?
Yeah. Oh, it's an hour. It's an hour.
Yes. Yeah, it's almost that time. See, you've been having fun. I'm going to tell on you. Come down to Christian instead of having fun. How dare you? Anyhow, all right. It's all good. I really enjoyed the conversation. And I'm so glad, I'm thankful to Mary, because I hadn't met you but for divine intervention through Mary. And here you are. And it's definitely, see, even down to here, having a conversation, you're gathering information to continue the research and the documentation. So in that sense, I hope others are paying attention. Hey, it's your St. Croix. It's your young people. You got to educate them. If they haven't been down to St. Croix landmarks, you got to take them down there to the Landmark Society to take a ramp around the place and get to see what was going on there, because how else are they going to know? And we don't have any one place that has so much concentrated in that one area, okay? Right. So anyhow, the Grim Reaper is here to kick us off in a minute here, so the last minute is yours.
Okay, for the last minute, I guess I will say, if you go down to WIM and you see the exhibit, we have some photographs with unidentified locations, but we know that long rows existed there. There are some photographs with long rows. If the places look recognizable to you, go into the office or the library or anywhere and ask somebody for a sticky note, and you write down the name of the location that you think it is and stick it next to the picture for me, please. That would help so much. And if you would leave your name, if you're comfortable with it, leave some contact information on the sticky note so that I can see who left the note. That would be great too. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Reflections is winding down, and Brother R is going to step in here and do his thing in a minute. All right, thank you for listening, and look forward to next Thursday. In the meantime, if you ain't got nothing good to say, be quiet. If you don't have anything good to do, go out and find it, because I got plenty out there to get involved in. Bye.